Rabbi is introducing another question. Hari Amru, the sages have said, Kisush shenata batzitz, a cucumber that's growing in a flower pot. The flower pot that's not attached to the ground, that doesn't have a hole on the bottom. V'igdila, and it's growing. V'yatza chutz la'atzitz, and it starts to grow out of the flower pot. And now it's hanging over the ground. Now the way the Chazal would view this is that what's sticking out of the pot is getting nutrients from the ground, even though it's not directly in the ground, because it's sticking over the nutrients from the ground that are growing up, and it's considered like it's growing from.
It's the nutrients that are
as it grows over. Yes. So what we're dealing with here is that this cucumber, before you planted it, I guess you plant the whole cucumber. I don't know. When you put it in, it was already tamei. So you put in a tamei cucumber. If it would be attached to the ground, it's not going to be tamei. It's going to be that planting
since it was in a
but since it's in a nutzitz, it's not considered attached to the ground. But as it grows over the ground, so what happens? Tahira. The whole thing becomes tahir because the nutrients from the ground. It's as if it's planted in the ground because
so something that's tamei can become
gets planted.
tahor.
Yeah, in certain cases it becomes tahir
because it rots. It changes its form.
Right.
This doesn't have a hole. It's not a otzitz nafku.
Right. So Reb Shimon responds. He says, "Yeah."
When it says teku, does that mean that later chachamim are not allowed to issue a
The ground is like a mikvah.
What usually
The whole idea
it doesn't
of a mikvah
mean
is
it means that
bittul.
the Gemara doesn't have an answer.
Okay. But does that mean that later Rishonim or Achronim are not allowed to paskin on
What's
this?
going to happen in Teku is that they're always going to go l'chumra unless it's a rabbinic thing that will be lenient. So the rules of what we do when there's a doubt will be applied.
No, but I think what he's trying to say is, could somebody override this teku?
No, we never answer.
Teku says
We never answer a question
Yeah,
about
no.
the Gemara.
Right. So does that mean later post-game, like
Right.
nobody could
So
say
they're
that.
gonna
Nobody
Nobody
gonna
could
rule.
say they know the answer.
They're going to
to
make
that
a
teku.
ruling on it, but that's because that's the ruling that you
That's
do
the
when you
rule.
don't know what to do.
oh,
So this older fellow that used to come to Surfside, his name was Moses Shapiro. He learned in Chachmei Lublin, and he came to America. Was a professor. I didn't know him well, but he came to my house once to eat. And he made his own wine. He was an interesting guy. So he said that he lived in Long Island or Staten Island, and there was a young rabbi that was there, and they were going to learn together. So they would come to a Taisvus. Taisvus had a question, and he would try to give an answer. This Rabbi Shapiro. So this young rabbi would always tell him, no, you can't say that. You can't. He thinks like he's upset with him. Why do you keep saying that what I'm saying is wrong? You can never say that. So he says, no. In the yeshivas, they told us, the young rabbi says, that you're never allowed to answer Taisvus' question. If you answer Taisvus' question, it must be you didn't get the question. So he's showing him how you can't answer it. So he says, oh, in Chachmei Lublin, we didn't say that. By us, we're allowed to answer any question, given it, except a question of the Gemara. The Gemara has a question that you're not allowed to answer, but in all the Rishonim, you're allowed to answer. There's different learning styles. But in the Litchi yeshivas, if Rabbi Kiva Eger asks a question, you can't give an answer. You have to say, if you give an answer, you have to say, so what was Rabbi Kiva Eger thinking? Because he must have had that answer. So it must be that this answer is no good, and you have to come up with why it's not a good answer. Okay.
Wow.
So Rabbi Shimon says, we're talking about the cucumber now, that goes out. Rabbi Shimon sort of looks at this down the line of the edge of the flower pot. What's in the pot is tamei. What's out of the pot is tahar. So boy Abaya. Abaya has a question now. What about the part that's outside, which is tar? Could that be a yad for what's inside? In other words, if tumah touches the one that's outside, would that tumah spread to what's inside the pot? Because the part that's outside is very similar to Rabba's question. If I have a live animal and tumah touches the live animal, could it be a yad for that dangling limb?
You said yes, even though it's alive, it could be, right?
That was a teku.
Oh, okay.
A bias question is, now I have something that's considered attached to the ground, but part of it is not considered attached to the ground. Is the part that's attached considered a yad for the part that's not attached because that's in the flower pot. So you divide the cucumber in half. Amar Rabbi Yomi has a similar question. Okay, if someone bows down to half a gourd, he says, "Oh, this is an idol." He bows down to only half. Only half. It must have been. It must have grown interesting because you can grow them into molds. You can grow a pumpkin in the mold. He must have half a gourd, half a pumpkin.
Half a pumpkin.
Yeah, so he must have grown it an interesting way, and half of it was the idol, the other half is nothing. So he bows down. So half of it becomes avodah zarah aser bahana. Aser bahana means automatically that it can't be makabel tumas eichlin, because you can't give it to a guy, you can't eat it. You can't do anything. Now, granted, an avodah zarah is also tamei, but that's a tumah derabanan. That's what we're discussing here. We're discussing the tumah of food. So, by Rabbi Yirmiyah, ma'osh tasi yad lechaverta. Could it be a yad that it could accept tumah? Let's say the dead sheretz touches the part that's not makabel tumah, the avodah zarah part. Will that automatically spread through into the other part, even though that half of it can't? It's all the same question.
What are you saying? Full sherets?
This is a tough one because it's connected together. It's
Right.
whole fruit. The fruit is edible. It's in
Right.
good condition. All the other areas,
Well,
there was a little bit of an issue of the connection.
well, actually, the first question of Rabbi was a live animal that has a dangling limb.
So that's
It's attached, but the part that's getting touched is not makabel tumah at all. The second question of Abaya is also the part that's getting touched of the cucumber is not makabel tumah at all. Rabbi Yirmiyah's question is the part that's getting touched of this gourd is not makabel tumah because it's avodah zarah. It's all the same. So the Gemara says teku. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says Harei Amru. Yicher shel teina shenifshach amur b'kli pasuk. This is interesting. Actually, they tell you when you trim a tree, so you have to make a little cut in the bottom first, and then you cut from the top. You should use a pencil.
Why do you think
cut in the bottom? A little cut in the bottom.
When you're
Why?
trimming a tree.
Trim a tree. Why? Because if you just cut from the top, which that's how you would normally do it, you cut from the top. What's going to happen is when it gets to the bottom, it's going to peel the bark as it falls. It's going to peel the bark all the way down the tree. You'll be left with no bark. It ruins the bark of the tree. So first you have to cut the bark, and then you cut it. This person had shenifshach. He didn't do anything. The way the branch broke is that it peeled the bark down the tree, so it's still attached. It's by the bark. The branch broke, but it's attached by the bark. Rabbi Yehuda Mitar. Rabbi Yehuda says that it's considered attached. Depends. Would you be able to tie this thing back up, and it will grow back, which many times you can. It will grow back. Sometimes you can tie up even other branches, and it will grow. So if it can get fixed, then it's tahar. Boy Rav Papa says, apparently, this branch had another branch that broke off it. This first branch is considered attached because you could get it to grow back. The second branch will not be able to grow back to the first branch. So the second branch is considered severed. The second branch could become tamei. The first branch cannot become tamei. But can the first branch be a yad for the second branch? Exactly the same type of question. Teku, you don't have an answer to. Amar Rab Zeira. Hari Amro, now this is relevant to this week's parsha. Maybe it's next week, because the Bais is next week, right? Tzaras. Even shebezavis. If you have a stone that's in the corner of a house. Now the way it worked was this stone that's in the corner is also the cornerstone for the next house. So tzaras gets on this stone. So there's two parts to the tzaras. First of all, you have to close off the house. You have to remove the stone and close off the house. If it comes back, even though the stone was removed, then the house needs to be broken. So
the tzaras goes back to the stone.
To the house.
I'm sorry, to the house.
It continues spreading.
Right.
So first I assume it's the stone, not the house. so I removed the stone. And then it continues to the rest of the house. That's at least one of the
So
explanations.
what happens if the stone and not the house stays the terrace? I'm sorry, I don't mean.
So that's it. That's it. The house
It's
is fine.
fine.
Yeah, you replace the stone. So, kishehu chayletz, the terrace is only on one side of the stone. The other house doesn't have terrace. It's the same stone, but one side is fine. The other side has terrace. So kishehu chayletz, when you have to remove the stone, so chayletz is cool. You have to take out the whole stone. Kishehu noititz, but when you're breaking down the house, noititz says shaloi yeminiach shel chaver. You can crack the stone and only take half of it. So it's very interesting. When I think it's the stone, I have to take the whole stone. When I decide that it's not the stone, it's the house, then I can crack the stone in half and leave the other guy's house intact without removing his stone. So Boyer Reb Zeir has a question. If someone walks into the house, that's tamei. He becomes tamei. Let's say someone walks into the other house. Is the stone that's one with this stone a yad to spread the tumah into the next house before the first house is broken down and before the stone is cracked and all of that?
This is what, like a duplex?
The same question, a duplex, right? Okay.
That's interesting.
The Gemara says, the Mishnah said, we're discussing this limb that's dangling. We said if you did shchita, it's machlekes Reb Meir and Reb Shimon, if the dangling limb is muchsher lekabel tumah, if it's considered like a katwet. Let's say you didn't do shchita and the animal died. So Reb Meir says that the dangling limb is considered aver menachai. It's considered like it was removed while it was alive, and it's not aver min nevela. It's not a nevela. And Reb Shimon says that it's tahar. Okay. The Gemara now asks, this din of Reb Meir, Mesa habehem, if the animal dies, it says it's aver menachai, the dangling limb, but it's not nevela. Ma yekabein aver menachai lever shel nevela. It's the same thing. Aver menachai is metama. We know that it gives off a tumah. The Gemara says ikabenaya. There is a difference. A nevela, an animal that dies, a dead carcass, it's tamei. What about if you cut off this limb before? We know that it also gives off tumah. So the Gemara says that there's a difference. Basar pirish mimena, if it's just flesh. Me'aver behema, basar pirish. You have to take out the mimena here. What's going on? Yeah, basar pirish me'aver behema. That's what you do. The flesh that comes off the limb. The ilu basar pirish me'aver menachai. If it's only flesh off a living animal, so leimatama, the flesh doesn't give off tuma. However, the flesh that comes off me'aver nevela is matama. Like we said, a kazayas of a nevela is matama, but a kazayas of an aver menachai is not matama. Aver menachai de matama mikra. What's the source that aver menachai gives off tuma? Am Rav Yudah Marav. Rav Yudah says in the name of Rabbi, we're talking about a limb off a living animal. B'chiyamas mina behema. If an animal, from an animal, it will die. That means from an animal, even though it's not the whole animal, a limb off the animal also gives off tumah. Gemara says, you can't say that. We need this v'chiyamas menahim. Teach me another halacha. Rabbi Yudah Marav. Dam Rabbi Yudah Marav. Amilav masnisatana. Some say Rav said it, and some say that it was a brisa. Very close to Rav saying it. V'chiyamas menahim. Miktzas behema metama. Miktzas behema eina metama. Some animals do give off tumah, and some don't. Ve'ezu, which animal doesn't? It's coming to tell me that if there's an animal that would have died, but I shechted it, it doesn't give off tumah. So I already used that min habehema from the animal to tell me that not all animals give off tumah. That not all, and you're using it to say that from an animal it does give off tumah. Aver menachai is tummy. The Gemara says imkein lichta rachmana mi behema. You could have, if you wanted to get the word from, you could have said mi behema with just the prefix. My min behema shma min atarti. That means that you're telling me both.
Wait. Now you call it using the words min behema. But earlier on we took away the word min.
No, but before we were saying that min behema tells me that only some animals become tamei. That means if a treifa that you shecht isn't tamei, even though it's missing a limb, but it's not considered a dead carcass, a nevela. You shechted it. Not all animals that are dead are tamei, even though they're not kosher. Okay. But the problem is that I also wanted to use mina behema from the animal to tell me that if I sever a limb off an animal, it's also tummy. So you say, 1 second. That word "from" you used for something else. You can't use it to teach me both. We say no, it's not true. You can use it to teach both because I could have said the word "from" as a prefix. The fact that you made it as an independent word tells me two halachas I can learn from that. We're gonna have to stop from Ihachi.
Rabbi, what do you say about the cornerstone? Does the cornerstone can it be a yad or no? In a duplex.
That was a taker.
Oh, that was a
Where I left
I
off
don't
in the
know that.
question.
Oh, also, Rabbi, did you find out
Just
who
wanna
the
make
Shimon
sure I have
HaChassid
this
was?
right now.
No.